Dave, we're not in the conservatory.
We're not in the conservatory.
Where are we?
We have ventured outside. It's Fieldwork Fortnight, so we have come to a place that actually lots of geography teachers at home might recognise. We're in the beautiful Cardinal Valley here on the Longmynd in South Shropshire.
And today we're going to be live testing some of the off-the-shelf fieldwork tools from Teach with GIS.
Absolutely. We're going to collect some data, we're going to put it onto a map, and we're going to show you how we did it.
So let's get cracking. Those off-the-shelf fieldwork tools, you need to come to teachwithgis.co.uk, and then you're going to scroll down and go to the Teach area of the website. That's where all of our off-the-shelf classroom resources live. And then we're going to select fieldwork from the different topic areas here at the top of the page. I think it's probably worth us just explaining why we start with these planning apps here. So these are all off-the-shelf apps, most of which you can find in other topic areas on the Teach with GIS website. But we've put them here again at the top of the fieldwork page for a very specific reason.
So I think it's really easy for us to think that the natural home of GIS in fieldwork is in that data presentation area, and there are lots of brilliant uses of GIS for data presentation, but we're probably giving ourselves a bit of a hard job if that's the first time that our students maybe see and use the GIS within that fieldwork process. We're probably starting with some of the harder skills and some of the more kind of complex tasks, and actually we're probably missing a trick if we're not looking at the GIS to help us identify our question, maybe to kind of put some context around the location that we're going to go to, and to help us sort of refine that question and the way that we're going to collect data and sample.
And we're going to look at that in a lot more detail in both the student and the next teacher webinar that we're running as part of Fieldwork Fortnight. So more of our thoughts on that later.
Definitely. So if I scroll down to the section that we're actually going to talk about a little bit more today, this collect data area.
I want to give you a bit of space here, Dave, to explain these, because you've really been the driving force behind their creation and have put a lot of thought into the structure of these and the different fieldwork techniques that students can use to actually collect this data.
Yes, so you'll notice there are 6 of these sort of off-the-shelf fieldwork activities, and the idea behind these is that they're very kind of commonly used fieldwork methods across a lot of different investigations, kind of settings, curriculum age groups, or sort of out into kind of larger pieces of fieldwork. So you can pick these up and maybe kind of just take one of them into your school grounds for a piece of fieldwork that maybe fills just a lesson period. Or if you're going further afield and for a little bit longer, you might take a combination of these and add them to your existing fieldwork activities to add a bit of GIS into there. And that's kind of the part of the idea behind these, is if you want to try a bit of GIS enabled fieldwork or a bit of GIS data collection, but you're not totally confident you want to build it all yourself, then these are a great place to start. Or if you just kind of want to do some quick fieldwork and you don't want to have to necessarily plan the whole thing and build the whole survey form from scratch, then you don't have to worry about that.
I guess the next obvious question then, Dave, is how do we actually get to these? How do we get them off this web page and onto a student's device?
Great question. So each of these is wrapped up inside a little story map. So I'm going to drop us into the weather and climate activity, which is actually the newest one. We only finished building at this a couple of weeks ago. And all of these follow the same structure. So what we're going to walk through now will look very similar for all of them. I'm just going to click this little white eye and slide that out of the way just to give me a full screen worth of space to show you that on. The very first bit that we come to is a little kind of description of what data this survey form allows us to collect. And you'll notice that some of the pieces of information in here are highlighted in orange because they're the critical ones, the ones you've got to record, and the rest are the sort of optional elements. So within this weather and microclimate, depending on your school context, depending on the equipment you've got available, or the variables that you're interested in, all of those actual kind of weather metrics are completely optional. So you can go out and just investigate one of those around the area you're interested in, or you can go out and collect the whole collection of them.
So how did you decide what was going to be on that list as critical data for collection?
Yeah, so I worked outside. I kind of taught fieldwork for kind of 15 or so years for the Field Studies Council before I worked for Esri. So there's a little bit of kind of bringing in my sort of past life into this and applying that kind of experience of sort of teaching fieldwork. And I guess in this weather one, they're the kind of main, easy to measure at one point in time recording elements. So things like cloud cover, temperature, humidity, I can go out at any point in time and just measure them as they are. Something like rainfall isn't on this list because generally that kind of takes us a little bit longer. We collect rainfall data over perhaps a 24-hour period, which is probably a little bit less practical for us to do within that weather or microclimate study, perhaps in a lesson period or in a single day.
And then in terms of students actually getting this on their device, that's what we're looking at here.
So the easiest way is just through this QR code. So I might have this up on my board and students are going to scan that before they go out and collect data. Or if I'm in the field, I might have that on a big card. Andy Funnell at the GA was talking about that's one of the things that his teaching assistants in his school are really starting to take the mickey out of him for, because he takes out these big cards with QR codes on, and they were like, "Oh, have you got a QR code?" I think it's a brilliant way.
I love that though, because it ties it to the context that you want them to collect that particular piece of data in. So they've got no kind of concern in terms of, oh, what am I meant to be doing here? You whip that card out, they scan it, and away they go.
Yeah, absolutely. And stops just one step short of maybe having it printed on your T-shirt, which is maybe the next place to go. Next
time we go out and film in the field, that's what we'll do.
The other option is through this open survey form. So there's a link that you can just kind of take straight to it as well. So if you may be using Google Classroom or something like that, you can copy and paste that link into there, and you'll be taken to this choice.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one to just quickly unpack. So if you go for the left-hand option, that open in web browser, that's just going to open this survey on the web browser on your phone. So for that to happen, you need to be somewhere with a reasonable data connection. So that works perfectly well in, pretty much all urban contexts these days where you tend to have good 4G, if not 5G connection. But if you're going somewhere where the connection is a bit more questionable, or where you absolutely know there's going to be no internet available, or if you're working with a group of students where it's likely that they're not going to have any data left on their phone because they're going to have been streaming Spotify the whole way kind of down to your field site, that right hand option becomes a lot more useful, because that is the option that will let you download the survey onto your phone or device in advance, and it will work even if you've got no internet connection in the field, and it will still work even to georeference the data points that you're collecting, because you don't need data to still get GPS signal.
Yeah, so for us today, we're going to go for this open in browser option, the simplest one. And what we see now on my screen is exactly what you'll see if you open this on a phone or a tablet or anything like that, just a slightly narrower screen. So question one is all about, well, where are you? What's the location that you're collecting this data in? And if you're on your mobile phone and you've got your location settings turned on, then the survey form will automatically notice where you are and add that pin to the correct place, the place that you're standing with your phone, which is brilliant if the place that you're collecting data is the right place, I guess.
Yeah, and I'd say the reason that we put this in with a map question is so that students can check as well. Because if their device has had a little moment of, if that pin has moved somewhere where it shouldn't be, they can correct it and put it back where it should be. Or if you're adding data later.
Yeah.
I was leaving that open for you to be able to jump in.
Yeah, if you're adding data later, so maybe you're using this form to collate your data rather than collect it in the field. So you use some paper forms, and then you're going to just kind of actually bring all of that data together. This is another thing that Andy talked about doing, because his school is a kind of no device school. Collect data on paper. And then the homework task, where there's no issues with their students using their devices, is then to input their data through Survey 123 into the form at home. So there's kind of no issues about kind of no access devices.
And then underneath that, we've got a name for this location. And that could be something as simple as Site 1.
Yep, or maybe something just a little bit more descriptive, a bit more meaningful to the kind of location you're collecting your data in. So it might be, I'm standing by the goalposts on the middle of the school field in this example, I guess.
And then date and time, again, that's the other compulsory element of this survey. Again, it will automatically record. So you can see the time and date that we're recording this webinar right now has been captured there. But just like location, if you need to edit that, so if you're entering data later that you actually collected earlier in the morning, you can change that just by clicking in the boxes.
Perfect. And then we're down to, I guess, those kind of weather or microclimate kind of measurements. And all of these are optional. As I said before, kind of depending what measurements you want to take around your school and what equipment you've got access to, you might use a different combination of these. The place that what I use does make a little bit of a difference is recording wind speed. So there's a couple of options there that are either kind of equipment-based options. So if I've got something like a digital wind meter or an anemometer, and I can get a wind speed in meters per second, or if I'm maybe using a kind of a no equipment approach and the Beaufort scale. So you can choose your option and it will give you the right box to put your data into. And if you are using the Beaufort scale, there's a link out to a little Beaufort scale diagram just to kind of help your students remember what does 3 on the Beaufort scale actually mean. And then wind direction, that was probably the one that we had most fun collecting out in the field, wasn't it?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. We went for the very lo-fi approach of taking some bubbles out with us, blowing some bubbles, and then taking a compass bearing of the direction those bubbles travelled off into. And then that final box there, that notes field, we've left this as sort of open descriptive space. Plenty of people skip over it. I've found these days that I actually start to get a bit poetic in it, giving lots of kind of additional contextual information about the location that I'm collecting data in. And I quite like that because I found that's quite useful later on when it comes to understanding some of the data that has been recorded here. I think one of the potential issues here, obviously these are public facing resources, so we have had to think quite carefully about balancing data collection with safeguarding. So you'll notice that in none of these surveys is the capacity to add any photographs, which is a really powerful part of Survey 123. But because this is public facing, we've decided to not enable that, to just not have that element of risk. Obviously with notes here, students can input potentially whatever they want. So we'd encourage you to encourage them to use this sensibly. We do have access to the back end and we do make a check in terms of what's been input, but obviously we're not monitoring that 24/7. So if you do come across an issue with something that's been recorded in the notes that you think is irrelevant or not appropriate, please do let us know.
So if we click submit, that's going to send my data off into our collection of data and onto the map. So should we take a look at that map?
Let's take a look at the maps.
So the results from that survey all get collated into one dashboard, and that's down a little bit in that story map where we found the survey itself. And I would always suggest opening that up in a new tab so that we can see that on a full screen. Within this one, because there are lots of variables in this little layers list, there are different layers that I can pick and choose. So I'm actually going to put on the Beaufort scale for our wind speed and direction. So I'll turn that layer on instead of the others and just pop that away. And then I'm just going to zoom on into where we collected our data.
So you can see as we're zooming in, the information on the left-hand side is changing. So it's only telling me about what is now in my map window. And I really love this because when we were in the valley on the day, that wind direction was making no sense to me. And then as soon as we put it on the map, it becomes abundantly clear that the valley itself is channeling that wind and that it's kind of flowing through that landscape. And this is partly why we've got the off-the-shelf collection and dashboard, to give you some of this capability potentially in the field as well. So if your students have been out in the morning collecting this kind of data and you draw them back, over lunchtime to have a quick look on your iPad at that data they've collected, misconceptions that might be developing can be instantly corrected. If you've got issues in terms of sampling where they've all clustered at one part of the valley, you can correct that as well. It just gives you some real responsiveness, given that we're often so time pressured in the field, so that you get back to school with the best possible quality data.
Yeah, I really like that as a way of using these. You'll notice as we zoomed in, then all of this information sort of changed, and that's the first way that you can find your data in what will hopefully be a bigger set of data than it currently is. As I say, this one's only a couple of weeks old. So by zooming into the place that you collected your data, you're automatically filtering it down to the data you collected. I guess the other kind of possibility is that you might have been out across lots of lessons with different classes and different lessons, collecting data in the same place. So if you want to kind of separate that out to have, okay, the data that just my class collected on this date in this place, these sort of date filter up at the top here can be really helpful for that. So I can pick a date or a date range and only show the data that was collected within that date range. And I can even do that down to kind of hours and minutes. So if I know that within this 50-minute period, this class were out collecting data, I can filter it down just to find their data, then maybe open it out to our whole year group's data, and then open it out to all of the data that exists in there about that place. The very last thing, just to kind of highlight on this dashboard, is this little download button. So if you want to get that data back out, maybe you need to present some graphs and you want to use Excel for those, or you just want a kind of table of all of your data back out at the other end. This little download button will do that for you. So we'll download whatever's in your screen, so the effect of your spatial filters and your kind of date and time filters.
And that'll just output as a spreadsheet.
Yeah, so it'll just download a little CSV, a kind of simple Excel spreadsheet. And there is a little shortcut as well up in the top right-hand corner. If you want to add that data to a new map so you can take control of the cartography and all of those kind of things, there's a little link up there to do that. So hopefully that gives you an overview of these off-the-shelf Fieldwork tools. We have run out of 15 minutes today, but we are going to pick this up again in next week's session, just to kind of flesh out a little bit more sort of the pre and post parts of this, the bits that kind of wrap around the edges. So where we might use some of those tools pre-Fieldwork, or how I might take this data a little bit further and do my own cartography with it in ArcGIS Online.
Looking forward to seeing you then. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.
Bye.